Okay.
Do you want us to say something?
Yeah.
Keep talking, 1, 2, 3. Keep testing.
This is all
Yeah, can you hear us? I can. It seems like
She can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, perfect.
Can you see the QR code here?
Yeah. We'll get back to that slide in just a minute. All right. Okay, thanks everybody for joining today. Patience, do you want to do an intro or should we just get started?
Why don't you guys get started?
Okay, sounds good. So, I'm Bilal, I'm co-founder and CEO of Poly, and I'm joined by Masood, who is our growth product manager. And today we're invited to speak here and share a little bit about how we think about talent and developing talent, and specifically how you can have yourself stand out as a world-class talent, no matter where you are, whether it's strategies. I know PwC is global, and maybe the audience here is global as well. It doesn't matter. What I wanted the goal of this session to be is some practical things that you can take away and start implementing that will help you really stand out in the talent market and improve your skill set and make yourself relevant to the job market, both today and hopefully in the future as well. Anas is here to talk a little bit about the non-technical side of things. It does seem like our audience is highly technical, so we'll lean a little bit more technical on the talk itself. But this is meant to be interactive. Feel free to jump in and ask questions, ask for follow-ups. And what I'm going to try and do is, like, as I'm talking about some of the practical tips, I'll also weave in the story of Poly and my personal journey. And hopefully that can help highlight how some of the things that I'm talking about apply practically to the journey that we're taking at Poly that we have taken. So I think with that, the best thing to do is probably just to give you guys a quick background on the two of us personally, as well as on the background on Poly. And then, as we talked about, we have a couple of opportunities to play with the product as well. So you'll get a sense of like what it is that we do and what kind of product we bring to the market. So I've been talking, so why don't you go first and give your introduction?
Sure, so my name is Anas. I've been with Poly coming up on 5 years now, which is surprising as I say it. I don't have a background in the tech industry. I used to work in real estate and private equity in a previous life. And then for personal reasons, I moved to Pakistan, both with my parents. Then COVID happened, and as Bilal might talk about later, because Poly is inherently within slacking teams, so everything at Poly went up into the right in a good way. So we were getting a lot of inbound leads and traffic, and the business was expanding very much at the time. So that's kind of the time I kind of stumbled into Poly, and since then I've done every non-technical role other than finance and taxes. So I've spent some time in sales, I've done marketing. These days, primarily, I'm in product. Most days it relates to monetization of the product. So as I was talking to, he's not here right now, but I was talking to Bilal. So one of the ways we monetize the product today is, we're a freemium product, so there's a self-serve motion. So I'm primarily responsible for that. So not necessarily involved in the launching of new features when it comes to Poly, although I do help out with that, but more related to how can we use our product to help make us money.
Awesome. So Anas has been here for more or less half the journey of Poly. Poly's about 10 years old now. But my background is as a software engineer, and I actually started out almost 20 years ago in the industry. So I graduated in 2006 and went straight to Microsoft as coming out of college. Ironically, I wasn't a software engineer. I studied biomedical engineering in undergrad, and I came to Microsoft as part of a program where they were hiring non-software engineers into early software engineering roles. Think of it kind of like an internship. So did that internship at Microsoft and then graduated into a full software engineer role there. And I worked really, really low level. So I know folks here were talking about how front end is an easy place to start. I did the exact opposite. I went in on the operating system super low level. So during my time there, I worked on networking and the Windows kernel. Specifically, my last project there was porting Windows from the x86 architecture to ARM. So I actually have a little bit of experience working professionally in assembly programming, and then I've done programming all the way up. My next job was as an iOS and Android developer, so I did Java, Objective-C. I wrote backend code there, which was also in Java. I professionally shipped apps in Python, and then at Poly, we used Node.js and MongoDB. So almost every kind of major programming language I've done production level code in myself, and then obviously people on my team have done it beyond that as well. I think the one exception to that is Ruby. No, I have nothing against Ruby, just haven't had an opportunity to work in it. But yeah, it's been a truly great journey from as a software engineer. Like the field has developed a ton. Just to give you an example, my first job at Microsoft, we literally had a binder. We would get a binder of all the API calls in Windows, and you'd flip through the binder and like look for the API that you needed to call and see what the API signature would be. And they would like ship an update to this binder once a year, and then all the developers would get it, and then we would update that way. So this is like before Stack Overflow, before Visual Studio Code, before Node.js came on the market. So it's, I was telling somebody here earlier today that in this industry, you have to reinvent yourself constantly. A lot of the things that we use at Poly today just did not exist when I was coming out of college. And that's why we're going to talk a little bit about this, but I'm generally not a huge believer in formal computer science education being the end-all be-all. It can be helpful to get you some of the concepts that you need to build on, but what you're truly trying to do is how to learn. You're trying to learn how to learn. A great developer is always learning. A great technology is always changing, and as a result, you have to constantly be able to reinvent yourself and learn along the way. And that's true whether you're in a technical role like development, or you're in a non-technical role where we're going from like a sales motion to a self-serve motion, and now you need to understand how this connects to the product and what billing systems we use and so on and so forth. All of that is subject to change, and so you just have to be ready to constantly reinvent yourself. Now, Poly specifically, we started 10 years ago. We started out as a feedback system for internal employees, and we actually started out as an email-based product. But shortly afterwards, we realized that Slack is really going to be a big thing in the future. We felt like messaging was going to be a big part of the way people were communicating at work. And so we ended up being the first app on Slack and building a digital feedback system for Slack, specifically polls. We launched with polls in Slack, and that's actually where the name Poly came from. And very quickly found success there. And then beyond that, we then added Microsoft Teams, Google Chat, Google Meet, and then most recently we launched Google Slides, and then just this week I think we're going to be launching in PowerPoint as well. So really we're allowing teams to gather feedback wherever work is happening, regardless of what modality your team uses to communicate or to gather feedback on. So it's been a great journey. We've built a lot of different things over the years, and on that front, I just wanted to walk through and get a quick sense of like what people are looking for out of this session. And I just wanted to get a sense of what your primary role or interest is. You can see here we have a QR code. You can join from there, and you can go and submit your responses around what your primary interests are. It looks like our audience is skewing more heavily technically, but this is our PowerPoint. This is our Google Slides product. You can do similar things in Slack and Teams, and then we also have other ways of engaging, like live audience Q&A and so on. So that's kind of like the overall quick story of myself and the product. And I wanted to just talk you through what our agenda is going to be for today. We're going to be spending time on 4 different areas. Number 1 is training your sense of standards. Number 2 is skills and resources. Number 3, development focus. And number 4, showcasing your work. And so really this is it's an encapsulation of different things that I've learned in 20 years in the industry. Honestly, feel free to jump in and how you've seen these things as we're talking about. And I encourage everybody in the audience to jump in as well. Hopefully somebody's monitoring StreamYard if there's questions or things coming in. It would be great to tackle those in real time as well. So I don't have a ton of slides. I'm just going to be talking. I have a few notes on my phone. So I'll just start with the first thing about being world-class and why even I picked that as a topic. So fundamentally, like I was a biomedical engineer, Anas was a mechanical engineer in terms of training. And I think one thing to really internalize about software is that it's probably one of the only technical fields in the world where you can stand out with just what you can do yourself on your computer in front of you. So just to give you an example, I drove here down Shire Vessel. If I want to go build a new overpass because like there's just too much foot traffic on one side or the other, I need to get government approval. I need to have probably millions of rupees of capital investment. I need to have an architect. I need to have a civil engineer. I need to have all of these resources come together to be able to bring that product to life. And that's true in electrical engineering. If you want to build a power plant, as a biomedical engineer, if I want to build a pacemaker, whatever product that you have in the physical world, it requires lots of investment because you need to gather resources, you need to gather talent, you need to gather approvals to be able to bring that product to market. That is completely the opposite in software. And a single individual, I know Sam Altman has been going around saying that there's going to be $1 billion company that has just a single person working there. And I think that that's absolutely possible with the scale and reach of software. You can build something, put it out in the market, and have people start using it, start getting value from it, and hopefully start paying you for it with just you, a computer, and an internet connection. That is all you need. And that's something that's accessible, sadly not to all 6.5, 7 billion people in the world. But probably at least half that, and everybody in this room and on this screen likely has that access. And so like that really is the only thing that you are limited by. And I think people don't give that enough weight. It's absolutely magical that you can do that. It levels the playing field because now somebody sitting in Karachi is no different than somebody sitting in San Francisco, is no different than somebody sitting in London. Maybe your computer's a bit faster, but it doesn't matter because your computer isn't the one hosting your software anyway. You're going to go and put it in the cloud somewhere. Once upon a time, it used to be true that maybe you needed that binder from the Windows team to be able to access Windows APIs. But that's not true anymore either. All of this documentation is available on the internet. Stack Overflow and now ChatGPT can give you access to the best answers on the most tricky topics, right? So you truly are just limited by what your brain can absorb and how much time you can put into creating stuff and understanding like the concepts that you need to get clear. I think sometimes people think about that and like, wow, there's like so much to learn. How do I prioritize? How do I figure out what to get into? And this is where I think AI has been incredibly powerful, right? I can literally go to ChatGPT and just be like, I have X number of years of experience in React. I have no React 18. But every time I have to go change this build thing in my ecosystem, I run into all kinds of problems. And so like, let's say, with React, a lot of people use things like Webpack or Babel to compile a React app. They always give you trouble. ChatGPT can actually walk you through step by step what are the things that you need to go and fix. What are the concepts that lie underneath that, right? There's something like Git, for example. There's a bunch of commands that you can learn. I need to do a Git reset. I need to do a Git commit, whatever the case is. But how do you actually understand the concepts that underlie Git? How it takes code and stores it? How it actually appends code on top of one another? All those things AI can now help you explain in the way that appeals to you the most. You can customize those questions and that learning to yourself. And I think that unlocks a level of mentorship that wasn't even possible a decade ago, right? Like a decade ago, again, you needed to go and talk to somebody who's a Windows developer, and maybe the only way to access and reach them was like on by email, and maybe they would answer your email or not. Doesn't matter. Today, that knowledge is available.
I want to jump into the question here just because I'm not technical, but using these AI tools to learn what you're trying to do, isn't that like doing it on easy mode in a way? Like, do you feel like you actually learned that way as opposed to someone giving you the answer?
I mean, I think it depends on how the thing about AI is that it is what you make of it. You can tell it to give you the answer, or you can tell it to teach you how it got to that answer, and so that you can understand that concept and really get a grasp of what's possible. And I think that second mode is really, really powerful and really the way that you want to use AI. I don't want to just get my answer and move on. And I think that's, let's say, a great segue into the next point that I wanted to make, which is training your sense of standards, right? One of the things that then happens when you're operating in a playing field where everybody is equal and where everybody has access to this technology is that the people that stand out in that field are the people who try to achieve the most and do the most cutting edge things, right? And again, you're just limited by your tools there. So how do you know what is cutting edge? What is good enough, right? And then that is something that we need to train ourselves on. It doesn't come naturally to folks. Most people naturally will attach onto a standard that they see and they can abide by, and they don't necessarily elevate themselves to what the world-class standard is in a given piece of in a given area. So let me give you an example. So if I'm starting, straight out of college, I've heard from people here that, hey, I'm 3 years out of college, 5 years out of college, I have just this much years of experience. You automatically have this belief that, hey, I'm a junior, or I'm a mid-level, I'm somebody who's just starting, and what I can achieve is going to be limited by my number of years of experience. And I think fundamentally, even absolving the technology and taking the technology out of the situation, that belief inherently in itself is self-limiting, right? If you look at the great tech companies of the world, let's look at Facebook, Apple, Microsoft. Microsoft, Bill Gates was 19, 20 when he started. 2 years into college, fifth semester, right? You're doing your fifth semester. He did less than 5 semesters of college before starting Microsoft. Steve Jobs dropped out of college and started Apple after the only technology experience he really had was an internship at HP, right? Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of Harvard after launching Facebook internally within the dorm room. You are not limited by the number of years of experience or how many technologies you've played with. Where you're limited by is the creativity that you have of what products and needs can fit in the market and what the cutting edge looks like. And so what that means is that what's imperative, what's so important for you to do is to constantly stay on top of and learn what is the cutting edge today. What is possible today? So I'd love to hear from the audience, what do you consider the cutting edge of technology today?
So
Name a product.
The first thing is AI right now.
Which product in AI? Which AI product do you use?
I've just been using ChatGPT.
ChatGPT. All right. Any others? Any other products that people have felt?
Also using ChatGPT.
Any other products that people have felt inspired by recently?
Yeah, for the case level of programming programs, I use Llama, which is NVIDIA DX, Llama, Popeye, AI.
So Llama.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Any software any software that is possible to train women better and जो mistakes बता सके कि आपके काम में क्या mistakes हैं और मैं आपको better train कर सके आपके काम को judge कर सके मतलब आपको improve कर सके या वो सारी चीजें
So एक software का आप नाम बताएं. Like what kind of what's it? Which software have you used that helps you get there?
हम जो यूज करते हैं ChatGPT ये है
Okay.
जैसे इंडस्ट्री में जो जिस कंपनी में काम कर रही हूँ वो बना रहे हैं मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कंपनी में वो सॉफ्टवेयर बना रहे हैं वो पूरे उनके कैमरा जो है वो जज करते हैं लेबर्स को फिर उनकी मिस्टेक भी बताते हैं और बाकी जो न्यू लेबर है उनको ट्रेन करते हैं
Right.
बहुत कम जगहों पे पाकिस्तान में तो खैर बहुत ही कम जगहों पे लेकिन आगे भी सारी जगहों पे ये चीज़ नहीं इम्प्लीमेंट हुई है
Exactly. One point that you made, I think, is very important. Pakistan में बहुत ही कम लेकिन बाहर फिर भी कम है. I think that's actually the mentality that I'm trying to say is we don't need to have that mentality of it's not possible in Pakistan or
It's
in
possible,
Pakistan.
but जो लोग कर सकते हैं जो लोग इस तरह के सॉफ्टवेयर बना सकते हैं वो यही सोचते हैं कि हम पाकिस्तान में क्यों इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहे थे जब बाहर जाके इसको इम्प्लीमेंट करें
But that's
अपॉर्चुनिटी उनको वहाँ पर ज़्यादा मिलती है यहाँ पर उनको पता है कि
so that's my point.
My pushback on that would be if you start implementing it here, you'll be able to go outside.
Yeah. It's the opposite way around. It's not that shipping for top 100 applications on the internet, sitting in Pakistan, sitting in, forget Karachi or Lahore or Islamabad, like in Dera Ismail Khan or Multan, or it does not matter, because all you need is that internet connection and a computer. Anything to add on that?
Yeah, I was going to just double click on that. Like, I've met engineers here who are shipping, from all intents and purposes, world-class code, and they have apps running, and I've taken them to a restaurant like Xander's, and they're out of place. They're like, the order, man. This is not a big of a story. So, because it doesn't really matter who you are, what your background is, what your technical background is, your family background is, you can truly be in Pakistan and you can truly compete at a world-class level.
And there are, I don't know if you guys know this, the head of ChatGPT's engineering team is Pakistani. Yeah, and you can see so many Indian people in tech who are born and raised in India, which is, in many ways has very similar backgrounds to where Pakistan came from. We're a country of 200 plus million people. The talent exists. It's just a matter of breaking the mental models around it, and then all of us encouraging one another to raise our level and raise our bar, because it is possible. And just changing that mindset and that belief in that culture. So, go ahead.
With regards to importance of use related to AI, this is thing
No,
not listening to podcasts, but summarize them, summarize articles, stuff like that. So it's really great for keeping up with the listeners. And other than the chat, GPT is also proceeds that form much better for development work.
Right.
And you can use different autocomplete options in your editor. There's Superman, there's Klein. And even now, it's not about the models that are like there's models that you know globally, there's models that you run on your phone, and I've tried that. So yeah, you're definitely not limited for it. You don't even need it in that time.
Yeah,
All that information eventually will have more smart enough that will honor the device.
and I would reinforce not just the AI component is good, but as human beings, we're social creatures. The community aspect is really, really important here. Don't discount the community aspect of things like Hacker News or Reddit, where people can mutually reinforce each other. One of the things that I always look at here is fitness. So fitness, everybody in the world, more or less, like unless you're somebody who's extremely on the high end of fitness, like everybody's trying to lose weight or get in better shape or whatnot. And we all know that it's better for us, right? Like it's not something that people need to tell us like, hey, it's better for you to be in better shape. Everybody knows this. But still people can't get the motivation or can't consistently be able to do that. And I include myself in this first and foremost, right? I've tried and failed many, many times. But time and again, people have shown that holding each other accountable in a community setting, or going to the gym together with other people, or watching when you eat together with other people, gets better results. And so don't underestimate surrounding yourself with a great community, whether that's digital or physical. Physical is better if you can find it, and I can tell you there are some truly world-class engineers here in Karachi as well, and they're always happy to mentor and grab coffee and so on. But on the internet, it's 10 times easier because there's 10 times more people, maybe 100 times more people that are available and that you can actually interact with in a digital setting and go from there. So don't undervalue that community aspect. Cool. So next up, I just want to talk about anything else on census standards. Next up, I want to talk about skills and resources. So, there's this belief, and it's not just in Pakistan, this is something that I've heard in wherever I've gone and recruited. Over the years, I've probably interviewed hundreds of software engineers. We've been around Poly for 10 years. I've been personally interviewed pretty much everybody who's either worked here or applied for a job here. And then beyond that, I was also involved in university recruiting at Microsoft, and so I was interviewing people there to join Microsoft as well. Almost universally, people feel like, I need this degree, I need this certification, I need this thing on my resume that shows the world that I can do what I say that I can do. And again, this is something where software is completely different than the rest of the world. And that might be true in civil engineering or electrical engineering or math, medicine, right? You need the degree, you need the professional certification, you need the approval. That is patently untrue in software. And in fact, like I was talking about, most world-class software companies were started by people that were self-taught software engineers or who didn't have that degree or didn't have that background that required that certification to advance. Really, what you're trying to do is actually showcase to the world that you can develop something, ship it to production, and have people use it. You're trying to demonstrate value. And the way that you're valuable, everybody knows there's like somebody in your family, more likely than not, that someone's like, "Bada kaam ka lagta hai," right? That's what you're trying to show on your resume. That's what you're at, and that is almost completely disjoint from who's the topper in their class in your computer science school. And so the biggest thing that you're trying to show is that you're shipping something to production. What have you actually developed for the world to use? What value have you generated for the world to use? And again, that can come in the form of projects, that can come in the form of open source, that can come in the form of work experience that you have. There's lots of different ways to do that. And I think here, I don't have generic advice. It's going to be very custom to what you're specifically doing. But for somebody who's fresh out of college, 2 to 3 years, which sounds like is the majority of the people in the room here, I would really focus on either figuring out whether your work experience is going to be relevant, and if it's not to the level that you think that it showcases your sense of standards, right? I know I can do better than this because this initial job was just my entry point. Then go and build something. The advantage of these AI tools now is that it is probably 8 to 10 times faster to build and launch something than it used to be when you didn't have these tools built, right? All the boilerplate code of how do I launch a new React project from scratch and set up my environment and what steps do I need to take to get the free AWS tier to work and launch my application on there. All that is just a set of instructions you can follow in 20 minutes. And so get something out in the world that will get you in the 90th percentile right away just by having a project that someone can play with and interact with and click on that's actually working and showcasing that you have that ability to deliver something. Now, along the way, maybe there's some skills or resources that you don't have. Again, I would start with AI as a mentor, as a journey. Start with your Reddit subcommunities or Hacker News communities and see what entry-level guides they recommend. A lot of times, the way that you think and learn is probably aligned to the way that someone else thinks and learns, and they might have written something down that would be beneficial and path that you can follow. And if there isn't, keep that in mind because showcasing your work is the last point that I'm going to talk about, and that's actually a great way for you to showcase your work. Is I learned this thing. I did not find any great way that taught me how to do it. I'm going to write that up and put it out in the world so that someone else can learn from it. Being front page on Hacker News almost guarantees you to get hired. And most of those are blog posts that some random person put together about something interesting or curious that they learned. And so you have to be willing to kind of put yourself out there and showcase that you're willing to learn on a consistent basis and show people that you're elevating your game and that you're truly producing world-class work, even if it's a small piece within your ecosystem, right? It doesn't have to be a massive AI model. It can be something like a simple web application. Again, that will get you much, much further than people that have only done the school projects that were mandated. On this point, though, I would like to hear what are ways that you all have tried to stand out and what's worked or hasn't worked for you.
Difference in resources of business मैं 100% agree आपको मेरा 12 years का experience already finance taxation में accounts में but unfortunately ये हुआ कि जैसे कि आपने कहा तो मेरे friend ने मुझे कहा कि आप mentorship में और मन स्टैक डेवलपमेंट सीखें क्योंकि वो हार्वर्ड वगैरह के जो मामला हुए थे उसमें मेरा जो बिजनेस था मैं कार्ड डीलर भी रह चुका हूँ, तो वो इतना अच्छा नहीं चल रहा था। तो उस वक्त मैंने एक जर्नी स्टार्ट की, जिसके बाद अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह कि मुझे ये है कि फाइनेंस और अकाउंट्स को मैंने छोड़ा नहीं है, लेकिन अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह वो जो बैकग्राउंड था उसकी वजह से मुझे जो सॉफ्टवेयर हाउस और सॉफ्टवेयर से रिलेटेड जो चीज़ें हैं बहुत हेल्पफुल है।
बिल्कुल।
तो अपने आप को इससे नहीं करना चाहिए, और ये आपने जो लाइन लिखी स्किल्स एंड रिसोर्सेज यू कैन डेवलप फ्रॉम एनीवेयर। यस, मैं आप सुबह ही अपने SMS से भी कह रहा था कि आप बैठे हो यहाँ पे, आप भले लेटे भी यूट्यूब में बैठ के कोई वीडियोस वगैरह अपने आप की स्किल डेवलप करते हैं, ताकि आप एटलीस्ट कुछ तो सीख सकें।
Yeah, if you're showcasing that learning journey, people are interested in finding people who have shown the ability to learn. But specific skills, specific resources that I found helpful. So edX is great. This is the MIT open source courses. They have great courses on development, on AI. Like I said, I was not actually a software engineer coming out of college. At that time, this is funny enough, it was like right when YouTube was launching, there was no like developer content on YouTube. But we were literally studying out of books. You could go and check out a book from the library, and that's how you would learn. Today you can find custom guides, and you can have an AI write a custom guide for you that is tailored to the way you learn. That's another thing, another reason why I'm not very fond of university education when it comes to computer science is that everyone learns in different ways. And the most effective learning that I found is project-based, where you're actually building something. And so universities tend to teach you theory first and then have you do projects, whereas like that will I find dull your interest in the actual how do I ship something and show it on the web? How do I go to a URL and see my thing actually load? That's the most exciting part to me of developing a product. And that comes after 4 years or 5 years of university versus doing that in 4 or 5 days of walking through a tutorial or walking through a video or walking through an AI-generated guide.
I think it's important to kind of understand what what's the best way that you learn, right? Because that will help you, it'll help you learn obviously, but it also helps you use these AI tools and stuff. So if you just ask ChatGPT for X, yeah, it'll throw an answer back at you, but maybe either you don't understand it or it's not the way you think about things, or it doesn't really help you in that explanation. So you have to kind of understand, so I'll give my example myself. I'm a very step-by-step, break a big task down into 10 small tasks first kind of guy. So for me, it's when I approach ChatGPT with a problem and I do a lot of data analysis work, for me it's, okay, I have this big problem that I need to work on. What are the 10 steps that I need to do to get to that problem? So first I'll break it down to step 1. And then in that step, I'll do ChatGPT or Claude to help me write some SQL code or whatever have you. And then that is what I use to kind of understand, okay, step 1, A, B, C, D, kind of really break it down. That's how I learn. But I know that about myself because I've been doing this for a long time. So you have to understand what your learning methodology is. A lot of people are visual learners. I can't stand watching a video to learn something. For me, it's too slow. I'd rather read it so I can go back, highlight, maybe take some notes. Some people are, you learn a lot from YouTube. I know you pick up a lot of stuff through podcasts and videos and stuff.
So the good news is that there's so much content out there today that it really depends on your life. You can customize your learning journey to what's going on. If you have a long commute, all you need is a pair of headphones and you can listen to a podcast. And that's useful even if you're not learning a hard technical skill. Maybe that's useful for the training your sense of standards, because you can listen to what self-taught programmers that have gotten to elite places. You can just hear them talk about their journey. You don't have to wait for somebody to come to Geeks and let you to talk to you. You can listen to the best. You can talk to the best. You can go and check out free books and biographies and blog posts about how people have developed themselves and draw inspiration from that. Because again, as we were talking about, it's all about having that really high bar for yourself and having a great sense of standards. All of that is possible regardless of what your life looks like. You can use your commute time, you can use your leisure time, you can use the time that you're lying in bed, you can use time that you're sick. It is really I think the best learning does come when you're paper and pencil and you have something printed out in front of you. There's actually some good data that learning on screens tends to be more distraction oriented and you're not as able to focus. Which brings me to that next point. one of the things that I've seen, and this is counterintuitive because this is meant to be a tech talk, but I think it is actually really, really important. I'm going to spend just 5 minutes on it, but it's important enough that I wanted to make it an agenda item, is that in today's day and age, maintaining your attention and focus on learning and on tasks, on developing, whatever it is that you're trying to do in front of you, is actually a superpower. Because the default state for most people is to be distracted, right? The default state for most people is I got a WhatsApp message coming in, like my mom is calling me, or this thing is happening, or that thing is happening. And I think this is actually something that we suffer a little bit more from as Pakistanis. We're very blessed to have large families and large family obligations, and you also have a lot of interruptions, right? Maybe last month you couldn't get around the city, or there wasn't water, or all of these kinds of things. They manage to break your focus, and so that I think is actually something that we have to cultivate in ourselves and learn how to stay really targeted on task and let all of the rest of the noise kind of fade away. And there's actually like really good exercises that you can do. There's great material on this. And I think honestly, if you're like starting your journey, that's actually a really great place to start. I recommend everybody on my team this professor, his name is Cal Newport. He writes on how to improve your attention and focus in a distracted world. It's absolutely critical. Like we, especially the generation, I'm kind of on the edge of it, but I graduated 20 years ago, so I guess today people are really living in it. If you grew up with mobile phones and you didn't have no idea how to work without it, it is actually really, really hard to find those multi-hour stretches that you need to learn. And I encourage you to go look at Cal Newport's work. It's actually really fundamental that you have multiple hours in a row of uninterrupted time if you want to learn. Like learning in snippets and stretches, it will actually put a limit as to how far you can go, because it takes time to build enough context in your brain to actually develop the concept and have that concept really get down. I encourage everybody here to like work on paper and pencil. So even if you're watching on YouTube, take notes on a paper and pencil. So like in my bag, literally the top thing that I have, let's find my, I have to take it out. But I always have either a digital notebook or a physical notebook with me, because it is just that important from a neurological perspective to write and to read on physical things. And so as much as I advocate starting with AI, don't finish your learning with AI. Keep a physical notebook. Learn how to break yourself away from the phone. Put your phone away in your bag, or find those multi-hour stretches where people can't bother you. And this is weird. In a culture where you're expected to be constantly available, again, you have relatives, you have friends, you have neighbors, you have all these like distractions in the physical world. It is so, so important to be like, look, I am working, my future depends on my ability to focus. I need you to respect that. And I think people do respect that. They're gonna consider you weird. But guess what? People that have really high standards are considered weird to begin with. It's okay to be weird. Like that should be an acceptable part of doing great things, is that people who do great things are by definition not normal, right? And you're going to be looked at as somewhat abnormal, especially if you carve that time out in your life. But it's absolutely essential to be able to do that to elevate your learning skills. You have more experience with this. Any other tips?
Yeah, I was going to say, you're kind of focusing on the external distractions. Like for me, the challenge, I'm lucky enough where at home I have my own office, I can lock the door, keep all my kids down, and all that kind of stuff. I don't have parents that live with me who will be come off any. For me, the biggest distraction is actually internal. It's not the external factors, like my mom isn't here to boss me around, it's my own willpower. So focus is something, for me it's a muscle. It's not something that necessarily you're born with. It's not something you wake up one day like, I'm going to spend 3 hours studying or learning. So when you do sit down, you'll get distracted by your phone, or even just like staring off into space if there's nothing else in the room. So it is something you have to kind of actually train yourself into, and that only comes with practice. Doing all the, taking care of the external factors, for sure, it's both actually, it's not one or the other. The external factors have to be conducive for you to be able to focus internally when you're by yourself and have that experience.
And actually, again, going back to that point of university education, I think what universities are for is to help us find socially acceptable focus time. You don't need the university to do that. You can do that for yourself and just like create your own classroom and your own setting, right? And Anas is lucky enough to have that room. Even if you don't, you just need that space. Like I often will use. I also have young kids, and if I don't have that space, so like right now I'm here for a wedding, and I have several siblings, so I didn't have my own room in this past month when I was living with my parents here. Like you can get those, you'll see workers have like those earmuffs to protect your hearing when somebody's like using a jackhammer or a hammer. Like literally just put that on and like tune out the distraction. And as distracting thoughts are coming, use your notepad or use your notebook to write down what those distractions are and how you deal with them later. Similar story, one thing that's proven to work is people get very frustrated and daunted by big tasks because it just feels so scary, you don't know where to start. Use AI for this. It describes to it what big task that you have for the week and how you can get started in a 15-minute chunk. And then just say, I'm going to do this for 15 minutes. I'm going to do this for 30 minutes. And then those 15 minutes and 30 minutes, they build on each other. You start building momentum and you go from there, one step in front of another. One thing that I've seen, a common pattern is like some people who are like really good at studying apply the same skills as studying to work. They're actually different skill sets. Being good at like rote learning and studying in a book, while some of those skills are translatable, they're not exactly the same, especially if you're in like a team environment where you need to like collaborate with other people. And that actually is a great segue into the final point that I wanted to bring up, which is we're all fundamentally, if we're building like great software, we're going to do it on a team. We're working individually is great, and I think there's some really great stuff being put out there by individual people, but even the Gates and Jobs and Zuckerberg of the world, they eventually build a team. So you need to have world-class communication skills, you need to have world-class ability to talk through what you've done. And I think that's actually like a lot of the things that I've talked about so far, they're pretty obvious, and I think I'm just repeating them because I'm trying to package everything in one takeaway that you can use. But this last piece is super critical to get the attention of people that are looking for talent. So ultimately, I think employers are not stupid. By and large, employers know that they're looking for people that not necessarily have exactly the skills that they need. You're not expected to come in and like, oh, I can code in your exact stack, in your exact domain on day one. But how quickly can you learn? How curious are you? How self-motivated are you? Those are the types of things that you can de-risk for the employer by highlighting that up front. So I'm going to show you some examples of people that have done a great job of this while sitting right here in Pakistan, just to show you what I'm talking about. So this is somebody who used to work at Poly. His name's Zain, and I got his permission to share some information about how he does things on LinkedIn. So he has this great ability where he just like shares posts about things that he builds. So here he built some GitHub art, simple front end, like he didn't even code this up, it was just like making commits in the right stages. So let's go to another example. Here we go. So here, self-hosted APIs and databases. So just like what database he's using nowadays, just wrote a small post on it, and got nearly 100 comments on it because he's sharing how he's learning. He's sharing how he's working. He got hired at Poly. We had no idea who he was. We had no connection with him, no contact with him. But I had been following him because I was just looking for people that show curiosity and interest in work. And he wrote a post about how the company he was at shut down, and we were immediately like, yes, this is the kind of person that we want to hire. Let's go and have a conversation. So he was sharing with me as I was preparing for this talk that on at least 5 occasions, he's had inbound job offers come in with skipping coding interviews, all that stuff, because he's been showing for years and years all the stuff that he's building. And these are not big, heavy projects. You can go look at them. They're like small, light projects that just show your curiosity, your interest, and your ability to communicate and articulate what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. And that really, really goes a long way in helping you stand out. Now, if 2 people have the same amount of experience, but one person has all this on their LinkedIn or on their blog or on their website, who are you going to go with as an employer? You're going to go with the person who's shown that curiosity, because ultimately that's the biggest risk factor as an employer that you're trying to get rid of. Is one of the issues with not being world class and not having that interest is that, in Pakistan, we're all familiar with this, there's that kaam chilane wala attitude. And that's exactly what employers are trying to avoid. And showcasing how you're learning shows people that you're going to step beyond that. You're going to get somebody who's actually going to go beyond that. Now, given that this is Pakistani women in computing, I wanted to show that that's not limited to men. There's actually great examples of women who've done this in a digital space as well. So this is Sarah Suedan. She is a front-end developer out of Lebanon, and she has built like a great website. It's just a screenshot, but she's an independent web UI engineer. She's turned that into authoring and speaking opportunities, and then she designed a course on specifically web accessibility. So she focused on a niche within that front-end area where she did not find content, and she produced some world-class content on it. Enough people started looking her up that she was able to create a course, and now she's monetizing and selling this course for dollars in Lebanon, a country where dollars are really hard to come by, right? And she's doing all this from her home in Lebanon. She's not somebody who has access to San Francisco or Microsoft background, all these types of things. Like, it's doable anywhere. And this is what I mean. Your niche doesn't even have to be in development. It can be in accessibility. It can be in self-serve growth funnels. We actually had an ex-Poly team member who went down and started his own contracting company. His niche specifically is helping people with large self-serve user bases monetize those user bases. So like understanding how they can make more money from the user bases that they have. And I would posit that Hannes is actually a world-class expert in that because of his experience at Poly. And so just identifying what that niche might be, where there's a new niche, where there's something new happening, and look for edges, right? Like look for things that are changing in the world. So there's a lot of people putting out AI courses, right? How to learn, how to teach yourself how to program in 90 days using AI. Could be a course, I'm just making this up like on the spot, right? But like when there's something new happening, there are going to be people that are looking for somebody else to do the work to teach them how to do it. Take advantage of your world-class skills in your discipline, produce that for other people, and then either monetize it directly or indirectly through the LinkedIn posts and the ways that Zane's been doing it, or through the direct way that Sarah's been doing it. There's different ways of doing this. That's why I highlighted 2 different examples. It's not just default advice of post on LinkedIn a lot, or you have to have a beautiful website, or go on a speaking circuit. Different things work for different people. Like similar to the point that Anas was making earlier, maybe you have your own learning style, maybe you have your own communication style, maybe you're just not comfortable putting yourself out there on LinkedIn. That's me, by the way. Anas knows this about me. I don't post enough on LinkedIn. Every time I have, it's been great. It's just like I find it really hard to write and put that out there. But I communicate in other ways. And so the joke at Poly has always been that I should start a podcast and I can talk for hours. But in case you haven't done that somewhere. So you have to find your own way of communicating your message out there. But once you develop your world-class skills, showcasing that is super important.
The other advantage of kind of showcasing your work is that, I mean, you can come across like about university note and you're like kind of studying together, you have a group study session going, and then you're like, okay, fine, you do chapter 1, you do chapter 2, and then we'll all explain it to each other. You actually can't explain it to someone until you understand it yourself. So just, even if you decide not to hit publish on that LinkedIn post or that blog post, if you just write it, even if it's just for yourself, like, hey, would someone else who is reading this or watching this or learning from this, would they understand what I'm trying to say? If you can surpass that goal, then that's when you know that you've actually mastered it yourself.
And your initial posts are not going to be interesting or the best. time and again, I've seen this with people, like, you get better as you get feedback from consistently posting, consistently putting yourself out there, and that using that feedback to drive better.
So it's like watching the first Mr. Beast video.
Yeah.
Go watch his first video on YouTube. It's a joke. But,
And does everybody know who Mr. Beast is? Yeah. So Mr. Beast actually has a fantastic 40-page document on how to be world-class. A lot of the topics that I'm talking about actually come out of that piece. And the thing is, Mr. Beast, what he did is he got a group of like 3 or 4 other content creators, and they all like produce videos and then watch the responses on the videos. And they produce more videos and they watch the responses on the videos. And they produce more videos. They're in that community of feedback loops from each other. That's why that community aspect is so important, right? Hey, I'm putting out work. What did you learn? Oh, I learned this. Okay, let me share that back with you. You can accelerate your learning times 4, times 10 when you're in that group and you're all doing that learning together. And the world is big enough where you're not competing with those folks. There's actually, like, in my belief, an absolute shortage of computer programmers in the world today, because you look at how many things could be digitized and they're not. It's because people haven't had the ability or the opportunity to sit down and program solutions for them. There's a shortage of programmers in the world today. You're not competing for views. You're all adding to this greatness of content around that enables all of us to learn better together. Cool. That was, look at that, exactly an hour. That was the overall gist of what I wanted to talk about. I have another kind of closing question for you. What do you feel are the biggest barriers for you in applying world-class standards to your work today? We have the QR code here. Folks can join that way. And otherwise, just shout it out. I'd love to hear what you think are your limitations or things that you're going to take away from what we've talked about today in terms of implementation.
Just by looking at this, for me it would be lack of mentorship and guidance. So lack of networking on my part as well.
Okay.
So that's something that I'm working on.
Cool. Do you feel like there are sufficient resources around and it's more about your opportunity to avail them, or are there things that you would need connections from other people to be able to do?
I think the second part of what you just suggested, where to look for those connections, one, and how to build on the already created connections, two. So that's something that's obviously on my part. Something that I need to work
Have you reached out within this? Guess just maybe you know better than I do. What resources do you like for community development does PWIC provide in terms of? Do you guys have mailing lists that people can participate in, or forums?
We do not exactly have an official forum for development. I think that's something we can work on. But we do have groups, so we have mentoring opportunities for people. So, and
Is there like a WhatsApp group?
yeah, there is. And
Yeah.
so the team is all part of it. So we do plan to create a WhatsApp group specifically for that, so like a tech forum or something like that. But on the side, we also do sessions which are completely technical, so that people who are learning, who are looking towards the learning part of the tech learning, they can attend those sessions. They are completely online and they are conducted by people from the industry. So for example, if it's something related to front-end, so I can conduct it and I'm a front-end developer or some other person who is something like that.
Cool. Any others?
Definitely, I can say like confidence, lack of confidence in my learning phase, and I don't have the proper guidance how I can make myself better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would put the proper guidance on how to make yourself better is the same mentorship that Rubo is talking about here. I mean, again, it is incredibly powerful now to have AI at your fingertips and have it develop programs and guides for you, right? Like, you can literally tell, like, hey, this is where I am, this is where I want to be. What is possible And I tell you, in Pakistan, everything is possible. I know people that are, like Sarah, have built courses or websites or products that are pulling in thousands of dollars a month. All of this is possible sitting here in Pakistan. I want to get there. Help me design a plan on how I can get there. And then, I think the physical in-person mentorship can also help, like, in terms of talking to people. But, like, I will say this, that it often looks like when somebody's sitting in front of you and they're addressing a room that they have all the answers. You truly don't. This industry is so dynamic. It develops so differently that we're all just learning. And that's why I keep iterating, like, have high standards and then try to learn and meet those standards over and over and over again, and you'll eventually find your way.
Also, I think the biggest barrier for me is finding the people with the same mentality as you are.
Yeah.
Like, you can network, you can get a good group and people, and you can lead them. But it's like people often miscatch or get a misconception of your ideas. That's why, which is as in my level, we don't have any communities in our university. And I am taking the forefront so I could bring those communities, maybe GTSC, MLSA, so everyone could get the same opportunity as I am. I got the unfair opportunities. Like as an ambassador, I'm working at a company already, and I'm the only guy who's a campus ambassador right now. So I'm so much into it, but I cannot find the right people with the same mentality.
Yeah, hopefully that's where groups like this are really powerful, right? Because you're trying to find other people who are, you're here on taking time out of your weekend, I'm here taking time out of my weekend, because we're all trying to help each other get better. Like, truly, I always talk about this, like my vision of what success for Poly looks like is that we lift not just the business of Poly, the ecosystem around us, so that, people like Zain hasn't been at Poly for 2 years now? But he's gone on and done great things for other companies because he took some of those things that he learned before Poly, some of the things he learned at Poly, and then he elevated himself and continued to go on. It's about lifting the entire ecosystem. And the more that we all operate in Pakistan, the more that we put ourselves out there, people who have that experience of operating at an international global level, the more that we'll be able to lift each other up. And again, I would also encourage you to look for online communities. A lot of times, wherever you are, there might not be people that are thinking on the same wavelength around you, but I guarantee somebody on the internet will be. And maybe that's actually more similar to you than somebody who's in your town.
And it's true for both online communities and like physical spaces like this one or any other of these. It's like when it comes to the confidence thing you were talking about, you have to be not afraid to ask questions, even if they sound dumb to you or, I mean, we're all part of the learning process, it's all about learning. Like I tend to be into all those, I tend to be often like the single non-technical person in a technical room like I am today. But that's okay, like I'm kind of used to it. I always get away with it, like, look, I don't know anything, you have to teach me. So I will ask you 10 questions until I understand what you're trying to explain to me.
I think that's a really important point, and it's something that I'll talk about with regard to the sense of standards. Opportunities, like this is why showcasing your work is so important. Opportunities don't just come. Like if you build great things, people don't just come. You do have to do a job of showcasing yourself, showcasing your work, and putting yourself out there, being comfortable with getting rejected or feeling embarrassed. It is a really big part of growth. I'll just give you an example. At Poly, we're today, we have 18 employees globally, doing millions of dollars of revenue. I've been in operation for 10 plus years. When we first tried to raise money for this company, we pitched like 90 investors, and only 3 of them actually wrote the checks. Despite the fact that I had Microsoft on the resume, I had been at other startups, I had a pedigree, and I was not expecting that. But the question is, do you believe in what you're doing? Can you keep going? You have to be willing to take those punches. You have to do it in ways that are not rude, that are not difficult, in a genuinely collaborative way, but you do have to be a little visionary. And that's okay, right? It's okay to put yourself out there. Again, be very respectful but confident in your skills. And that's okay. Like I would never mind if somebody here sends me an email. I may not always have the opportunity to respond. My email is bilal@poly.ai. I will try and respond. I get a lot of cold emails. If it's a good email, then I'll try and respond. But if you send it to enough CEOs, you'll get somebody to respond. If you're going out and trying to sell something, no is the default answer. And when you're going and applying for a job, you're selling your skills. No is going to be the default answer. You can't be demoralized by 5 rejections or 10 rejections or 20 rejections or somebody on the internet calling you stupid because you can figure out React 17. Like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter because you know that you're holding yourself to a high standard, and the way that you really get there is by putting yourself out there and pushing against that standard day in and day out.
What was a key over that? You have to be kind of single track on what you're trying to achieve, and if you have that kind of goal in mind, you can keep on.
And like I said, people will think you are weird.
Yeah, don't call it something. And that's fine. Like, I don't think that's a big deal. Like, if you look at going back to the Mr. Beast example, you read or talk about like various stories. Like, in the beginning, they would publish a YouTube video, and then he would be on Skype. Was on my WhatsApp thing that he would be on Skype with his 4 buddies for 20 hours.
Yeah.
Just analyzing it like step by step and talking it. Like, no normal person does that. There's a reason like he's super successful. Like, you read the stories of Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or like, okay, they're successful. They're like, oh, but they're categorically insane in a lot of ways, and that's fine. Like, especially in this industry.
That's what world class. That's what world class means. World class means sometimes you're not there for every social function. It means that sometimes you have to say no to people and they don't quite understand. It means that you're not on the beaten track. Because if you're on the beaten track, then that's normal. That's not world class, right? That's okay. Be comfortable being uncomfortable. Because those are the people who are consistently learning and consistently pushing on the edge. And I think that's something that we categorically as a society need to do better on. But it's part of learning and growth. Sorry, Krishish.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in the things that you guys are saying, it's good to be weird. First of all, the more you are yourself, the better you perform, whatever you want to do. And I really wanted to also tell you guys about myself as well, considering the fact that I am Felix Karachi Chapter D. So sometimes I have to do a lot of the stuff on my own. And this is something I can give out to the women in tech. We have to do some stuff on our own, or the audience outside often see those at us and they're like, how are you doing all of this all on your own? This is not normal. Like you also said, it's not normal. People like they look very weird. They look in fact insane as well sometimes. So that is the thing that comes with taking responsibility of something that is big enough, something that's going to make an impact as well. And I think you're very correct about that.
So another barrier I think in my life is this is the line between management and developers or technical engineers. Sometimes in my experience working with senior executives is they buy into a lot of the time. Like I think it was last year or this year that through AI came out and we wanted to automate a certain task. And I said, hey, let me do it my way, in my approach, right? Which would save you money. But since there was so much hype around UI, what we did was kind of building that entire automation pipeline in UI, and I click a button, I run it 15 minutes from the print.
Yeah.
If I had the freedom to do it my way, like, I have the expertise, I know what's practical.
Yeah.
And it's not that I was against that particular tool framework. I'd actually experimented with that before. The thing is, you can't really go against it. So that's
Yeah.
sort of big issue that you highlight.
No, I mean it is definitely like that. It's actually when we talk about the 4 things that I had mentioned in this poll, one of them was organizational culture with low standards, right? Like that's sometimes I think one of the biggest barriers to raising your standards is when you're surrounded by people that haven't lived up to your standards. I think that's what you're talking about here, is that the technical team here doesn't have the ability to embrace their own standards. Instead, they're being forced into a specific organizational standard, which is not up to the mark. I mean,
The standards are right. It's just that there's a lot of
yeah.
I need to understand what's.
Well, I would argue that that's a mistake in the standard because the whole goal of an organization is to success in your objective, not necessarily to go and follow the hype cycle. It's to achieve your outcome, whether that's profitability or bringing your product to market, whatever the case might be. And so, I think that's a really difficult thing to solve for, and I think that's where having your own space where you're building your own things and experimenting with yourself and pushing your own growth beyond just what your job is doing is really important, because otherwise it's really easy to fall to the level that your job is at and not necessarily elevate to building results as fast as they can be, right? Like, again, taking the example of Mr. Beast, and I encourage everyone to, you guys are familiar with that, like, look at his process and try to mimic that, because I can almost guarantee you if you follow a process like that, you'll get really good at something. It may not be at building YouTube videos, but you'll get good at something. It's weird, it's obsessed, it's insane, but those are the people who make a difference. And in that world, like, he's not looking at what someone else thinks is going to make a video good. He's looking at what's going to make a video good. And if there's some tool that has hype, it better have hype because it's making the video good. Otherwise, the hype is unrealized, unfounded, and it's lowering your standard.
Also, you should have like confidence in whoever you're working with. That's also important. If you don't have confidence in what they're able to achieve, then how are you working with them?
Yeah, and I think that's actually something that we've learned at Poly is like we actually, even in managers at Poly, we value deep technical knowledge. So it is important for everybody who is managing the work to be able to know and understand the work. So we generally shy away from pure managers. Instead, everybody has to have some knowledge of the ability to go deep. Amazon has this great leadership principle where they say that great leaders have the ability to dive deep, but also see the big picture. And I think that's super critical and a sign of a healthy organization culture as well.
Yes. I think one thing that you mentioned, there is a scarcity of programmers, right? But if you go and browse Twitter, you would come across posts like AI is going to do your job in 10 years. And so what's your take on that?
I think they're both true. And here's how they're both true. I graduated from high school in 2002. And I was doing my college applications, that means in the fall of 2001. And in fact, I was doing a college application when someone called me and told me like, oh, 9/11 has happened, and like that someone was him. We went to high school together. So we've known each other a long time, and it's been interesting just like having the work experience and personal experience. Side story. At that time, I wanted to do computer science, and everyone around me was like, hey, the dot-com bubble has already happened. All these jobs are going to get outsourced somewhere. There's no point in going and doing computer science. And guess what? Everything that you know and use today, like from iPhones to Facebook to whatever, was created after that, and it was created in Silicon Valley. It was created in places that you would not be traditionally called outsourcing centers. It's completely wrong. That being said, you also had at that time a bunch of people who were programming who weren't passionate about it, and weren't maintaining world-class skill level, and they eventually ended up leaving the field. So what happened? Both things were true. There was a shortage of software developers, but there was also a lot of people who probably shouldn't have been in the industry. I think that's still true today. I think there's going to be people who will learn how to harness AI and use it to massively make themselves more effective and to learn faster and to do things without mentorship and without permission. I think there's going to be people who are today not able to understand and how to harness those tools, and they'll get flushed out of the industry.
In the context of Pakistan, like the post-COVID world has accelerated a lot of more opportunities as well. So that's opened up a whole different avenue of work as well, right? Like,
yeah, I think in the context of Pakistan, both COVID and AI are massively beneficial. Massively beneficial. COVID is what made remote work possible for a lot of people. So absolutely huge for Pakistan. Like so many people that I talk to here in Pakistan that are working for a company in Germany or in Singapore or in the United States or wherever, and those opportunities weren't there 5 years ago. So I guess COVID was 5 years ago, so like 6 years ago.
I have a related question. How exactly is Poly using AI or maybe using AI?
So today we don't have it in very much in the product. But let me finish the thought and then I'll circle in on the product side of the Poly. So the second piece is AI is going to make software more accessible to everybody. And as a result, I think it's going to more significantly impact higher cost of living regions rather than lower cost of living regions. So if in San Francisco, like your rent is like $3,000 a month versus here a really good salary is $3,000 a month, I think it's going to shift jobs in that direction. As long as you know how to use the tools and be world-class at what you do. And so I think you have a distinct advantage in that you're coming at it from a place where you can have a really good standard of living for a much lower objective dollar value. I think the jobs that are going to be at risk are the people that kind of got fat and happy on the San Francisco salaries. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so the next question was, how is Poly thinking about AI? So a few things. Number one is we have started implementing AI in our products, and that you can get some help creating polys with AI. So you can actually use AI to help you generate questions and responses and so on. Still, it's at a very cursory level. Like it's not nearly as advanced as I'd like it to be, but it is something that we're going to be improving over the course of the next couple of years. But then also like being able to like bucket responses, especially if you have open text responses into different groups. Doing things like sentiment analysis across large pieces of data. At Poly, we have, correct me if I'm wrong, more than 50 million pieces of data now across 10 years. More? Yeah, more. A lot more. Than 50 million pieces of data. So like being able to use that consistently is a huge AI application. And then obviously just internal processes like our own development processes, our own development environments are all now AI-enabled, AI assisted. And I think we're learning a ton about what it means to be productive. Like the simple thing is that it's never been easier to become a developer, and it's never been easier to produce a lot of good work really fast. But that means that also that people expect a lot from you. If you're calling yourself a programmer, you have high expectations. One person is going to have to do what 10 people used to do 5-6 years ago. And that's okay because they also have tools that enable them to do that. That's part of the natural transition, I think, of software.
My question was mostly regarding like how will you use AI in your product offerings, which I think you answered first.
Awesome. Any other questions?
So you mentioned that you guys have a lot of data coming in from your application. So how do you use that data? Where do you apply that data?
So today we just give it back to you in the form of results. I mean, this one doesn't have a lot of data, but we have. So right now we just give it back to you in the form of results, and then you can export that and manage it however you need to. But over time, our aspiration is to do more than just individualized results and aggregate that on an organizational level, as well as being able to bucketize that and make sense of it at like a deeply human level rather than just in the form of different types of graphs.
Do you think that there will be a validation of using that data to improve processing and operations within the company?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think there's like, you can use that as a feedback loop within the company, especially if you take the data and then move it into a process and then measure that again with data, putting that feedback back in the process, so on and so forth. But it's a long journey. We're 10 years in, we're still building new integrations. Right now for us, the right thing to do is to be in more places, and then we'll focus on doing more.
Where do you see Poly going in like the next 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I see us doing more feedback in more places. So we just launched Google Slides, we're launching PowerPoint soon. More interaction types. So we don't have things like quizzes today. We want to be able to go do things like that directly within the platform. And And then obviously enabling things like easy creation management and understanding of your results through AI is going to be a huge part of what we do in the next couple of years. And beyond that, we have an entire roadmap around how we're going to go from channels to meetings to presentations and then eventually into the HR systems. Like, we have a whole roadmap of where things go. Ultimately, more poly in more places, more use cases. We have a set of use cases that you're coming in to use today, and we're just expanding that set of use cases every year.
Even the plans for poly beyond the polls.
Yeah, so we today can do things like Q&A. We're adding quizzes hopefully later this year. Customization and theming is a big part of what we're up to. So there's years of work that we still have to do to play to truly be world class. We're in the same problem. We have to be a world class product and compete with one of our big competitors based out of Sweden, other ones based out of Slovenia. We're big, based out of both the US and Pakistan. It doesn't matter where you are, you're competing with the same set of people that are producing great products on the internet. We have to do our part to compete. Cool. All right. With that, I'm gonna say thank you to everybody. Really appreciate everybody jumping out, taking time out on the weekend. I wish you the best of luck on your journey to be world class. And hopefully, as some of you saw in advertising material, Poly is hiring in Pakistan, so feel free to drop in an application or follow up, and we're happy to consider constantly looking for world class talent. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, we are going to have your questions after our class, and उसके बाद हम लोग एक छोटी सी activity करेंगे. I hope you guys can also stay for that. If that's okay.
I'll try. Yeah. At some point I do that, man.
It's alright.
I'll let you know.
आप लोग फिर questions के लिए करेंगे and first you guys can
Awesome. Thanks.